Checking in once again with State Representative Tackey Chan of Quincy for probably what will be our last Tackey Talk of October, Tackey.
It may very well be, depending on our schedules in the next week as we approach Halloween. The warm. I actually do enjoy late September, early October because I always like the fact it's the most temperate part of New England, despite some rain and the fluctuating weather. But it looks like the sun is setting quickly, and we've lived our whole lives with it, but always surprised. And at the same time, the weather's been very volatile.
For sure, October is a volatile month. It's the changeover shoulder season, if you will, from fall to winter. So anything could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's October 23rd today. So yeah, I mean, we're next week is Halloween things will start closing out in terms of big events locally as we head towards Veterans Day.
And here we sit with the federal government still shut down.
Yeah, I'm expecting this to continue right into the holidays, to be honest with you. I mean, the Democratic Party actually has a good stance regarding the Obamacare tax credits. That actually has wide-reaching effects to a lot of folks, including small business and independent contractors. It's a really crucial healthcare lifeline for many people. Doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter your political affiliation. This is a legit human issue that affects a lot more folks than you realize. And I always remind people over and over again, you don't actually know your neighbors, like what's going on there, like in their like day-to-day life stuff. Maybe they are on Obamacare, maybe they're not, maybe they need government assistance, maybe they don't, right? Maybe they are business or employers very dependent on government contracts and tax credits. Maybe they're not. You don't know. And I think this is one of the things going on here is that people don't realize the impact the federal government has had, not just on the state and local governments, but also on the private industry. And people don't need to share that information. People, keep their lives private, very understanding. But people also get disparaging to other folks and about, these kind of various social programs or business programs, and not realizing who you're talking next to may be a person that is very dependent on those things to get day-to-day by or just keep their jobs.
Yeah, I say it often. People can be critical of folks using government assistance, but then I ask them, would you want their life?
Well, exactly it. And government assistance is not strictly social services. Contract vendors, people using tax credits on their businesses or their employers' businesses. It's a lot more involved than just social programs. It also involves the economic development components, of which this administration has decided that they're going to pick and choose their economic components. For example, the bridge to the Cape. I don't go to the Cape, so can't remember the name of the bridge right now.
Oh, it's the Sagamore and the Bourne. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys all know I don't go to the Cape. So,
It's too
but yeah,
close to the ocean for you, I know.
yeah, he suspended contracts for that, the payment, the money. So, which means pending contractors can't get the job done, and it's going to cause more economic harm for the Cape, which is very dependent on people getting over the bridge. And again, you can say one thing, but you got to look at the holistic picture of real people being affected.
Yeah. In Massachusetts, is the marketplace, the healthcare marketplace, separate from the Affordable Care Act nationwide, or is it intertwined?
It's intertwined.
Okay.
During the Obama administration, they provided money, bottom line, money that offset a lot of the state components on that program, which actually saved the state a lot of money as just the bottom line. And it's
Okay.
issues with No Child Left Behind and the MCAS systems. MCAS is actually integrated into the federal program more. No Child Left Behind. I know I'm using a very old term, but essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
More, integrated into that system that had been before. Again, because of federal dollars that will flow if you could move into more of a national compliance. We talked about this last time, where the government tries to create a uniform system by financial incentive among the states,
Yeah.
starting back in the FDR administration and right to Eisenhower, especially the massive transportation program that Eisenhower did, created as a classic form of conformity. The Trump administration does the opposite. They're trying to withhold funding and cost shift to the states and disincentivize uniformity. They're trying to force states to change their laws by taking money away, but then it creates a non-uniform situation.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because I know Massachusetts had a marketplace before Obamacare.
Absolutely. And we already see some ripple effects. I mean, you may have seen in the the paper yesterday that point 24, the Harvard Pilgrim, not Harvard Vanguard, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare is laying off 250 workers. It is an employer of well over 1,000. And that's a significant part of its wealth. I think it's over 1,000. It's a significant part of its workforce. I just glanced at the article last night, just kind of did the fast read.
Yeah, I have it here actually. They employ over 4,000 in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so stand corrected. So it's 4,000. You lay off 250. That's not a substantial percentage of your company.
Right, but they did lay off 100 back in the spring as well. So it's a indicator.
Yeah, foreshadowing, and it's going to be foreshadowing for a lot of healthcare industries here. Depending on what the Medicare shakeup looks like, the continued withdrawal of federal contracts and vendors, and it's going to affect all the trades and construction. So.
Mhm.
I remember Congressman Lynch telling me, and he's very close to the trades, but all the construction projects have been halted because of federal funding and tax credits no longer available. So if you voted for Donald Trump and you're in the trades, well, you're just out of a job, and it's because of one man. It is the person you voted for. So I love the disconnect of people where it's like, it's always like, I voted for this and this happened to me, and you can't figure out why. And it's like, well, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, he did it to you. But you supported that individual, and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I didn't know what to say.
Right, right. But why do you think the shutdown is going to go on for so long?
At this stage of the game, the politics of the Democratic Party is not great right now. I mean, the polling is horrific. Actually, both parties' polling is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party has been perceived as very weak at the moment, and they're unable to actually leverage anything at all this entire year period. And the revision budgets that the Republican House in particular has been able to utilize, and the Senate to bypass the filibuster rule by reducing budgets they approved early in the year, has really rattled DC Democrats, because you can't trust anyone now. You can't trust a deal is a deal. And that really made a big thing. I mean, you think about this, guys, right? If you cut a deal and you agree to vote for this stuff, and then a couple of months later, coming a revision budget, bypassing the filibuster rule in the Senate, and they rescind all the stuff they made a deal on.
Yeah,
it doesn't make you feel good to cut a new deal.
Yeah. See, this is why things aren't working. When you said that, I just harkened back to Tip O'Neill, and that's how he got things done, was striking deals across the aisle.
And you came through on your side of the deal.
Correct.
This is the problem we're having in Congress. And I tell people, always put yourself in shoes of other people. If you cut a deal with someone and they found a mechanism to renege on you and you can't stop it, well, were you inclined to do it again, people?
No.
Yes, I tend not to want to deal with people again if I've been reneged on.
Well, right. What is it? Burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me, right?
And that's kind of where they are. This is a combination of many factors. So obviously, one, Democratic base is very mad at Congress for not staying the ground. The Democratic Congress, part of the Congress, particularly the senators, thought they had deals that no longer became deals after the fact. And it's now become a blame game, which is very much popular public relations. We talk about this for every single shutdown. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Political party, the blame game is the same script every time.
Yeah.
Just different party, same script. And they have a touch point. This Obamacare tax credit issues on healthcare is legit impacting people who are not just on social services. This affects real people's lives that aren't on social, the people with jobs and small business owners, people who are trying to make life work in a very difficult economy.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing to hang on to. And let's be honest about this politically. It also gives them ability to move into the midterms.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I'm sure that's in the back of their minds. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be overly political, but there's also this element of moving to the midterms. As the administration and the Republican side of the Congress is trying to figure out how to navigate going to midterms, it's just going to get worse. And in case you're wondering, again, I always say this again on this talk with you, is that both the Democratic and Republican Party bases keep shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
We will register Republican or register Democrat. It's not uniquely a Massachusetts issue. And given the fact that many states, unlike Massachusetts, because we have open primaries, unenrolled voters can vote in a primary on a Democrat or Republican ballot. You have to pick one, or a Green Party, or other parties may want, but you don't lose your unenrolled status. Other states are closed primaries, meaning that only Republicans can vote in a primary, only Democrats can vote in a primary. as the number of registration shrinks in those states, a smaller and smaller and smaller group of people make the decisions who's the Republican and Democratic nominee.
Yes, correct. Yes. And that gets overshadowed sometimes, but that is a significant factor for sure.
Absolutely, because it changes you as a candidate in a Republican Democratic primary to narrow your messaging to a much smaller group of people and demographic, which then turns off not just the other party, but a lot of people in the centrics part. And then the centrists will not show up to vote because they feel the franchise. And I tell folks, even you're a disenfranchised, you still got to vote. Even you don't want to vote for anyone. You can write in your own people,
That's right.
but still show up because a message needs to be sent. And now, it's ironic because I'm a sitting elected telling you to do this. You can do it to me, obviously, but it's true. And this is kind of one of the baselines of democracy. And people who feel like they need to change the political parties, go back and register, go to the city committees, try to join a local organization. And you don't have to be, jerky about it, but, go in and learn the system and participate. I mean, this was a campaign question asked me many years ago when I first ran. How do we change the party? I'm like, you participate. And they got that glazed over look by that person. Like, what do you mean? It's like, well, it's not you can. It's America. This is not a dictatorship.
That's right.
Well, it feels like a dictatorship right now, but I mean, it's a place where you can choose to participate, and you can choose to lead participation, and and you volunteer. You don't get paid for this as a participant. So people feel sometimes that the real life gets in the way, so need to do real life stuff, which is more important. And secondly, people get frustrated and just move on.
Yeah, I know democracy is not a spectator sport. It's inherently of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yeah, exactly it. There's a strange phenomenon, my observation of 30 odd years of looking at this now, is that there's a greater expectation for me to solve the problem on something they can participate in.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're an elected, but you're also a voter, right? And a resident.
I tell people in municipal elections, I don't run the place. I just live here.
That's exactly right. I heard the governor yesterday give a startling statistic about the SNAP program. The state gets $240 million a month for SNAP.
Yeah, we're getting some very bad stats. I think I talked about this already once. The shifting the employee costs on a federal program, not a state program,
Right.
from 50-50 to 75-25, which means that we have to pick up 75%, which also can be tough in hiring new people because there's increased cost to your state dollars on a federal program. And also they create some new metrics for all states to comply with, which results in more cost shifting to the state if we don't hit certain metrics. And this is going to be very challenging because they just changed the rules of the game on the fly. It could be upwards of $400 million, depending on how you want to do the metrics.
Really?
Of state tax dollars to fill in a federal program, because we do a lot of shared costs with the feds. It's kind of part of a federal incentive, as we talked about. And
we'll give you this if you spend that, basically. Yeah.
And we'll provide a chunk of it if you provide yours. As long as you got skin in the game, the feds put money. Right. And that's becoming less and less true as we go along. I mean, very private sector mentality. Someone else can pay for it, and we can shun that responsibility.
Right.
So it's not the only one. I mean, right now, trying to determine people who need housing, emergency shelter housing is a state program, but not a federal program. But a lot of homeless shelter programs actually have a federal component too. And they're already looking at the barrel of potential budget cuts, and more people being on the streets than ever. You're going to start noticing this if these budget cuts continue at the federal level and we can't backfill. And it's going to be children's and women are going to be out there more than I think you're going to realize if the state can't figure out a way to backfill.
Yeah.
If we cannot figure it out. And not like I'm, again, promoting you to spend your hard-earned dollars, but if you have a local organization, doesn't matter what it is, that provides services to people, I very much encourage people to, you got a couple of dollars in your pocket you can spare. Think about an organization, whether it be a church, I don't know, a faith organization or not-for-profit, or booster program for the schools. I mean, please consider it. That's all.
Yeah, you could be helping your neighbor. You don't know, like you said before. I want to talk about shakeup in the Department of Transportation, Tackey. In Phil Ang we trust.
Yeah, this is not a healthy thing that's going on in my mind. You can't have someone run the T and run transportation simultaneously for a long period. And it has been done before, taking people from the T to transportation. Rich Davey comes to mind. Rich Davey is now the head of Massport, CEO of Massport. In disclosure, he actually is my graduating class at BC High.
Yeah.
And but he went from during Deval Patrick, went from GM of the T. Actually started a commuter rail, became GM of the T, and then he went to Secretary of Transportation, and then he left that to run other public transit systems in other parts of the country, and then returned to be CEO of Massport. And he's very, very capable, very, very capable. But the T lost its continuity again, and this has been the criticism of the T from the Romney administration is the inability to maintain a consistent GM with long periods. And then the same criticism came up to Deval Patrick and the same with Charlie Baker, the inability to maintain long-term leadership. And the T had to be restructured during Charlie Baker, where we basically put in a type of receivership to do restructuring to try to keep a T general manager longer so they can continue their plan forward and not have a new person scrap everything and start over again. And also ensures that there's the contractors are involved, know that they're not going to lose their contracts because a new guy comes in.
Right.
So hopefully, the governor finds a new transportation secretary and does not do this to filling, because my personal preference is to keep filling where he is now at the MBTA. And where he is a contract employee, he's not your typical W-2 in many ways. He actually serves at the will of the board with a contract, unlike the secretariat. Tippett's leaving, honestly, guys, I think it should have been done a lot sooner. Never been very impressed. Actually has little to no background in transportation administration. Was more of an advocate of transportation, actual physical, like administrative capacity. And, I've been getting emails. Yes, I do read your emails regarding this very cagey, unclear bidding process for the NBA Turnpike rest stops. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. I'm thinking Mass Pike, which doesn't really exist anymore. The Turnpike Authority's gone. Now this makes a case where you should have a Turnpike Authority. You grew up on it. Ironically, it's like less probability of a problem was its own authority in some ways. But anyways, doesn't matter. The Mass Turnpike, rest stations, unclear what the bidding process is, and I got a bunch of emails on it. It was the one that's the most obvious mistake that was made, and whether it was rise of negligence or some kind of inside dealing, I can't tell you. I have no idea. But clearly something went wrong. And I'm going to gamble that it's not just that one. There's probably a lot of other smaller items that probably were screwed up too that probably never be disclosed.
Interesting. Okay. So in the meantime, I know probably Phil Eng is relying heavily on his staff to take care of the T while he's doing the state job.
Yes, and exactly. And I reemphasize again, Phil Eng deserves to be at the MBTA. The MBTA is actually meeting its timelines according to Phil Eng's maintenance programs, as well as trying to balance that crazy budget, which is in constant deficit, and while also dealing with the unions and the management teams too. It's not just one collective bargaining. And I talked to my T friends, and he doesn't sleep. The man's pretty much taken like a handful of days off in 3 years. Managing the MBTA. It's actually 2+ years now, but he's only taking a handful of days off. And he's extremely committed, and he's one of the few engineers we ever got for the T. And he actually came from managing another system, which is actually a little bit unusual in some ways. And the system's actually in the Northeast, unlike a GM I won't name that screwed us up during Snowzilla that came from Atlanta, who didn't understand that we lived in the Northeast. So, at least somebody that actually understands I know snow, ice, and sleet was very important. And I know this patronage, it's patronage, and Phil's job is to, kind of like make people do their jobs or go away. And
Right.
Charlie Baker made that a dumping ground people. I know, because I know people that who they were, and I know where they're from. And I'm like, yeah, you're basically been put there because you're useless.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, again, I don't run the place, but it's not like you don't hear stuff. And I'm very conscious Charlie was no different than anybody else. Baker used this as a dumping ground.
Huh, interesting. Okay. Well, by all accounts, Mr. Eng has turned it around, really.
He is. I'm sure, you may or may not noticed it, but things are slowly getting better because he's very systematic. It's an engineer approach. One step at a time, gradual improvements. Improvements get to the point that you actually never noticed they were improved.
That's right. Yes. So budget-wise, Tacky, where are we going from here?
Well, we talked about doing the overrides, about $100 million-ish plus some outside sections, and the governor announced this week doing about face regarding that about $170 million in earmarks, which is good news for local legislators and communities, not-for-profits, municipalities about targeted funds to their communities. So we're very thankful to the governor that she took an about face on that. And we have not quite $1 billion, but we have $1 billion ish built into the FY26 budget that's been unspent on consensus revenue. And we had our caucus last week where Aaron Merkowitz, the chair of Ways and Means, let us know that we are, for unanticipated purposes, on target regarding projections. Slightly off by a fractional percentage, but not for anticipated purposes is pretty much on target. And we're ahead of benchmark from last year. So we're not running negative to FY25. So we're slightly below FY26 to be considered on target, and we're ahead of FY25. So, but is that sustainable over long periods? We don't know. The future is very uncertain. And, we talked about already here about the $600 million potential tax loss because of certain couplings to the federal tax code. And we actually do not know what the economic impacts are yet on tax revenue as the federal employee layoffs from early this year, the buyout ends. So that's tax, U.S. state tax dollars, as well as unemployment money needs to be put in that area. And the impact on healthcare, as we talked about, 350 people now laid off from 0.24. And, we wait and see how this rolls out because you have the furloughs on 25,000-ish employees in the state. And the ripple effect on higher education, you may have seen in the Globe, Mount Holyoke College needed to use state assistant financing to issue bonds. Universities issue bonds, but the impact of the federal government is rippling across higher education, which is our number 2 economic driver after healthcare. And you already heard about how much they're slapping on biotech, $5 billion and counting on federal research grants on biotech, not just Harvard, on biotech on a whole.
Yeah.
And as we learned from COVID, the state investment is the reason we have vaccination of COVID. So it is not the sole reason, but it is a major reason because Moderna is based in Massachusetts.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of unknowns, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's if the federal government starts to withdraw their participation in not just research grants, but also tax credits, withdraw themselves from infrastructure projects of which they approved and now taken away. There's a ripple effect on the economy. And again, if you voted for Donald Trump and you were in any of these sectors that you're feeling, that you may lose your job or your business that's losing these ancillary benefits. So, for example, if the construction job doesn't happen, then you may not need food services, right? You may not need concrete. You may not need these places that support a big infrastructure project.
Yeah.
So this is a ripple effect going downward. The trickle down economy equals negative at the bottom. Trickle up means everybody rises together. And a trickle economy always works on negative impact in the bottom because the people at the top don't really need more money.
Right. Yeah.
And now you got corporations, especially tech industry folks, crawling over themselves, kissing hard that they try to protect themselves from this president because they didn't have a great time with his first term. And now I just heard today that these uranium/nuclear companies that is trying to get off the ground, they don't make any real money, is trying to get the federal government to buy an equity stake like they did with Intel and MP Materials. And again, this is called communism. When the state owns private companies that are non-essential, it's not like it's a utility. In other countries, the government actually owns utilities. This becomes much more like China.
Interesting. I had not heard that.
No, it's not. I mean, capitalism is private industry driven, again, except for times of war, where basically the federal government just moves in and tells you what you're going to build, and they're going to pay you for it. Most places, countries, a lot of countries control utilities because it's essential services. But when it comes to like a speculative company on uranium, seriously, right? And MP Materials has never made a profit, really. They've always run very little profits or no profits. So you're buying into, what they consider a national issue with a company that doesn't make any money. So Like I said, I mean, when state-owned enterprise move into private sector, in equity stakes, and it's not temporary equity stakes, in exchange for federal money, which basically you're buying a stake in a company. Well, it becomes partially a state-owned company, and a Chinese company requires the state involved in any foreign investments.
And what's the attraction to the government for doing that?
Actually, also China requires that domestic investment too, not just foreign.
Oh, okay.
It's a control factor.
Okay.
I mean, for example, Macau boards require Chinese appointments onto those casinos. So like at MGM in Macau, you're actually a separate company, registered in Macau, but they require the board of directors to have their own people there.
Yeah.
This has always been the kind of the ByteDance problem and TikTok problem and all those other companies that participate in the US is that, who's actually on those boards.
And so does it make employees of that company federal workers?
No, but it could potentially, give potentially, the government a seat at the board of a private company,
Oh, I see. Okay.
right? That's what happens in China. The government, right, does not need a justification. They don't have to be a shareholder. They just can say, we're getting on your board and you're done.
I see.
Right
Okay.
here, at least, like providing shares, and of course, in Intel, the Secretary of Business said multiple times, we are not going to be sitting on the board of Intel. Well, do you trust that's going to be the case indefinitely?
The board would have to vote that, right?
It's a shareholder vote in the end.
Oh, okay.
And when you're a substantial part of the shareholders, the bigger shareholders need to consider the survivability of the company.
Yes. Huh.
And if the government withdraws the support as an equity stake, the company could potentially die. So it's hard to say no if they want a seat on the board.
Yes. Interesting.
I find this all distasteful, as you guys can. I am a capitalist, despite being a very pro-consumer person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a pro-consumer person, but it's like, really am a capitalist kind of guy. I like
Yeah. But not a lot has been written about this. This has kind of gone unnoticed.
It's very nuanced.
Hmm.
Yeah, we already discussed in the past the quality of the people in the media,
Mm-hmm.
and business writers are the ones who should be able to catch this first.
Yes. And raise the alarm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and investors should be, I don't like investing on things that are, that has a government has some control over a private business in a manner where they're actually at the board of directors have a huge equity stake as a shareholder.
Hmm. And a lot of shareholders, people like you and me, might not even be aware that stocks they own are going that way.
Yeah, you buy mutual funds, which the vast majority of the public does, particularly of 401ks
Right.
or Roth IRAs or 401bs or
Yep.
whatever stock you buy mutual funds. And you can look up what the top 10 holdings are. You just don't know what the totality is. But those mutual fund folks are going to have to do a rebalancing at some point down the road, and they have to make that decision whether it's the best interest to grow this fund on behalf of the people who own the fund because they're getting a fee for the mutual fund. And the job is to make sure that your money is growing and safe.
Right. Well, and it benefits them too. That's how they're paid.
That's correct. If they're successful, you are successful.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. All these little warning signs to be on the lookout for, Tacky.
And again, it ripples down to our level, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they start, deciding that you're going to shrink the government GDP participation in the country from 23%, which is where it is before Trump, they're going to shrink it under 20% unless they yank off 4 points. The private sector is not going to make up that difference in 4 points over a long period. It takes many years for the private sector to make up that difference, and they just withdraw money from the private sector.
Hmm.
And we talk about food stamps, right? If the SNAP program turns out to be true and the cutbacks, that has a 20% revenue loss to all grocers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially small grocers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we, as you all know, we already put a lot of restrictions where you can buy, and rightfully so. I voted a lot for those things, and those restrictions are things you shouldn't be able to buy. But forget not being able to buy. Forget those customers don't exist anymore, or their spending power has been greatly reduced.
Right. Which trickles down to you need less workers or grocery stores, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's say there's a layoff at a grocery store because they see a huge revenue hit in a certain community because of the demographics, and they start losing their jobs. Well, you can thank the federal government for that.
Hey, speaking of grocery stores, I'm sure you've heard about this bill regarding self-checkout counters at grocery stores.
Yeah, we heard that bill last public hearing. It was the final hearing we had last Monday. Yeah, it basically sets a ratio for employees relative to number of self-checkouts. Uh, Senator Porfini filed the bill. It is a Senate bill under the current rules. I have actually no say about this on the committee matter. It's going to be in the Senate's chairs and the Senate side of the committee to make a decision. So I'm out of the picture, and there's no House counterpart. But it's pretty straightforward. It's basically saying make sure there's sufficient employees to cover the cash, but also deal with the self-checkout. And I don't know about you all, but I find self-checkout increasingly frustrating because you got to get your reward card, you got to scan the thing, you got to find the barcode, then you got to bag it, and how many bags do you take? And if you're in a place where they charge you for bags, and then is anyone watching what number you put in when you take the bags? And then if try to get a gift card or try to buy alcohol, the whole thing gets really weird. And then you have this one employee trying to manage 6 to 8 machines, and then you don't have enough cashiers to check out people who don't want to use the self-checkout. I mean, this experience is just horrific as time goes along. And it's not just an employee issue. This is a customer safety issue because people get angry. They get angry at the people working at the market or the retail store. They get angry at people in front of them. They can't figure out what they're doing. I'm sure you've had situations where someone's scraping for money because they don't actually do electronic payment by phone or credit card. So just like trying to find change in their pockets. And some people do pay by check still. If you go to the market, you just choose people to go pay by check. And it creates all kinds of unnecessariness and there's shrinkage. And I'm still very surprised that large corporations have not have accepted to eat those losses as opposed to losses. And if you go to Star Market, which is actually a lot of probably, if you go to Star Market, chances you're going to find me there. Have the gates up. It's a one-way gate. You go in, you can't go back out that side. But there's no, it gets more complicated once you get to the self-checkout because you could potentially create some fraud displaying how good the cameras and scales are. Or you can try to walk out if the cashiers, the person taking care of the self-checkout is too busy, you can just kind of like slide on by.
Yeah, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it does.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you stand and you give it like 5 minutes of thinking. Everybody here could probably see the gaps in security pretty quickly. I don't think you need to be, a security expert to see what's going on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. We'll see where that goes. So that's in the Senate then. That's just getting started, it sounds like.
Correct. The Senate has to December 3rd to release all the bills. And so my co-chair, Senator Pajano from Lawrence, is managing that bill on that side. So we'll see what he does with it. I can't speak for the senator.
Okay. Yep. Any movement on the home rule petition for the Corey Hills lease extension that you've heard, Tackey?
Nope, I really have no updates on that. It's pretty much where it is now. It's, again, Bruce Ayers and John Keenan's purview of how to manage the issue. So I'm not entirely sure where we're heading with that. I'm aware that both of them expressed concerns, especially Senator Keenan. And those who know, John was once a city councilor who was actually very engaged in this project when he was on the council. And he also worked in Mayor Sheet's office when this project was really kind of getting its headway forward. So we'll see how it plays out. The legislature can amend home petitions; they're not sacrosanct, but it requires the legislative and executive. Well, it's really the legislative. Yeah, in city case, it has to be legislative and executive branch to approve changes by the legislature.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, in towns, it's just the board of select.
Gotcha. Okay. We haven't talked about foreign policy for a while in this program, particularly, the Gaza situation and the Ukraine situation. Ceasefire seems to be holding at the moment.
For the moment, I mean, unfortunately, dumb things are going to happen and people get trigger happy and it's going to create another disruption because you can't control everyone, particularly on the Hamas side. And, I said before, Reuters has some video of Hamas beheading and killing people or whatever as they try to reassert their control because it was lawless and they are a terrorist organization. So, their solution to regaining control of Gaza is kill everybody that, is in the way. And you may have not noticed, but the Western media cannot find anybody who is critical of Hamas that were critical of Hamas early in the war. Was like, why is this happening to us? And you all know how propaganda works. And if you control the local population's news feed, the message is very simple. It's always the enemy's fault. So it was always going to be a war of attrition. as Ukraine as well, where how long can Hamas continue to sustain itself as a governing power, and if they don't want to be a governing power, how they're going to manage that if they don't exist. And this,
Right.
what the president says, Hamas will never give up control to Falaf. What was that? Falaha? It's a PLO. I remember it as more the PLO.
Yeah.
And the PLO controls the West Bank, and Hamas will never secede control of the PLO. I don't care what anybody says. So this is kind of part of the uniqueness of the Palestinian issue that no one wants to talk about. It's a dual government system of which one government is destined and desired to completely eradicate the other party. In this case, the PLO. Hamas wants to destroy them all. And it's not the Hamas, not the Palestinian people individually looking to destroy the PLO. It is the Hamas government, which is the terrorist organization.
Yeah, that gets lost sometimes, but yes, right. Yeah.
They're not one big happy family.
Right.
And again, Hamas has stated multiple times two-state solution is not on the table from their standpoint, even though PLO actually did decades ago decide to want to work towards that solution. It's off the table from us. And, and I've, heard stories that the body, trying to find the bodies, and so many splintered fractions of that terror group made it difficult to find the bodies, and they actually did break it up during negotiation. But the Trump administration didn't want to hear any of it. Get them or else. And the forensic teams in the Israeli side, has been trying to make sure that they are identified correctly, including a Thai national. Actually, this is kind of lost. This is not uniquely just a Palestinian Israeli issue. There are other nationals that are not United States or Israeli that were kidnapped and killed on October 7th, including Thai nationals. So actually, a Thai national's body was brought back as well. So it is actually more of an international issue than people realize. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it's very early on. Israel's technically still inside Gaza because of where the line is drawn. And, it will see how it plays out. But I mean, people tend to shed responsibility from us. I mean, they also had the opportunity to try to find a way through, and they decided that they didn't want to either. So it takes two to make a decision. If one side doesn't want to and the other side doesn't want to, well, here we are. And that's Ukraine too. Trump's recent proposal is to have Ukraine give up territory. That's politically problematic for Zelensky at home. Ceding territory does a few things. One, it puts Russia close to the center part of your country on the borders. It creates a much more difficult security situation, and it's a public relations nightmare for a democracy. If you secede territory, and the Constitution of Ukraine says they can't secede territory. It's inside the Constitution. If you know the history of that region and relationship of the old empires of Russia, there's a reason why that is in the Constitution, because they don't want the government losing more land, which is why they were fighting the Donbass nonstop since it was invaded prior to the current war.
Yeah.
So people forget that part. That there was 10 years of continuous fighting before they attempted to take Kyiv. And that was an ongoing thing, of which the past presidents, had been trying to figure out how to support the effort without escalating it further. A lot of saber rattling, a lot of threats, all this stuff. So, it's hard to drown out the noise of what's real, what's not. But I still have a hard time finding a way that doesn't make sense, because Putin's economy is war driven. It's 100% debt driven war economy. And President Trump's correct. You need to starve off their money. But I also learned that Biden asked India to buy oil from Russia to try to keep prices from rising too high, that affects U.S. customers. Oil is a global thing, and the whole world drives the market price. And a lot of domestic issues to maintain us happy at home, involves creating new problems regarding folks that are buying Russian oil, because they're trying to keep us from having to deal with higher prices, because we get angry at higher prices, tend to kick out politicians, right?
Yep.
So, this isn't lost on me either. A lot of these kind of Band-Aid approaches by the Biden administration to try to choke and also not badly hurt us at home led to all kinds of unintended consequences too. And then Trump's got to work with that economic problem. So Modi's getting mixed signals, right? The Indian government's from the Biden administration, buy, and Trump's no. And then they're kind of well, what do we do now? Because you made us shift all our our oil supply, and it's also poorly reported in news. They make it sound like the Indian government's trying to hurt Americans. That's not accurate. The Indian government has its own self-interest. You all understand that, folks. We should be respectful of that.
It's a sovereign country, yeah.
And their own population's a democracy. They got to keep their people happy too, folks. This ain't
Mm-hmm.
Russia where Putin just kills anybody he doesn't like, right?
Yeah, it's the largest democracy outside the U.S., I think, right?
And they vote over 70% turnout and higher.
Wow.
Yeah, they're a very high turnout country and a very complicated electoral system because of the fact that it takes like days to go to vote because they have
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
and they still use paper and it takes multiple days. And if you watch TV, it's nothing like our system. They don't have Scantron.
right.
And it's not very secure either if you think
Yep.
about how they do it, but that's another conversation. So, I mean, I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I mean, Ukrainians are hitting refineries inside Russia to try and choke off the domestic supply, trying to get people home angry at Putin.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying now higher gas prices because refineries are getting hit. And the government subsidies are not going to be there to offset the Russian population's higher costs. On the flip side, it's a wartime economy over there. And when war ends, you got nothing to replace it with, the thing falls apart. Believe it or not, the Saudi government buys oil from Russia and sells their own because they can get it cheaper. So, for example, you can buy Russian oil for $40 a barrel, and you're selling your oil for $50 a barrel. You just made $10 more profit,
Right.
on top of the profit you sold the $50 for.
Right. Yeah, it's a commodity. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a problem for Trump. He's got to figure out how to get these other countries, including the Saudis, for example, basically get twice hit on profitability by buying Russian oil. So there's a lot of moving parts here. In the near term, Ukraine hitting infrastructure and refineries in Russia, should create a lot of problems, not just in the military machine, but also getting more people upset with the central government and Putin. Will it result in overflow? No. But even Putin knows that a dictator can only last so long as the people are not unhappy, because there's a critical threshold when too many people are unhappy. You can't shoot them all.
Right. And that leads to, well, a coup, right?
It leads to a coup. It starts at a regional level where people start to riot and try to topple local municipalities or local, what do they call it? They don't call them provinces. But the
prefects, I think, or
prefects are emblage.
oh, maybe that's it. Yeah. No, prefects is in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, so the local, regional governments could face protests and topple. So, and that's how this whole starts. It never starts at the capital. Always it starts so lower levels and just kind of bleeds over, and that leads to the Gen Z revolution. The latest one is in Chile. So, he had the toppling of the government in Nepal, he had the toppling of the government in Bangladesh, and now they're moving to a place like Chile. Madagascar came down, their government got demolished, and it was protest by Gen Z folks. It's called the Gen Z movement. It's making its way, in the Philippines right now. It's in Indonesia. It's in Malaysia, moving through a lot of the world. Actually, it hasn't really impacted so-called first world Western countries, but it's out there, and there's a lot of domestic political instability going on in a lot of places as the local governments try to, become 21st century politicians. It's not about TikTok, folks. It's actually understanding your voters, and there's a lot of young voters. It turns out the older population, has gotten tired of how their government is working and joined the younger population in these protests.
Yeah, that's the beginning of it right there. Yeah.
Yes, it's framed as the Gen Z protests in places like Chile, Nepal, and other locations, but it's not. They start to fire, and the older generation realize, they're right, and they join in those protests too. So when you see those interviews, they have that like the 26-year-old, 22-year-old interview, but also have like a 45 and 60-year-old person interview saying, the kids are right. This is crazy. You can't operate this anymore.
I think, and Venezuela will be an interesting case study too.
Venezuela and Maduro is very challenging. I mean, you don't tell people the CIA is coming for you. So this continues to be blusters and threats, and all it does is put them on higher alert. And you may remember the first Trump administration, how do you put this? Deniability of a coup attempt, but they deny everything. With a small team of, I believe, not even 20, I think a very small team was trying to assassinate Maduro and start a coup, and that failed miserably. And it is a police state, and it's very, you think you can get that close to him? I mean, you got to offer somebody else, and generally the U.S. government's biggest problem is to offer to a different dictator, and then bad things happen.
Right.
Sure, the CIA. So, but to do like a full military operation, it's like 100,000 people on ships trying to dock in Venezuela where they're ready for you. And yeah, you're going to conquer, we're going to win. It's just the bloodshed is going to be immense on both sides on the way to victory. And I think that's the part that, he's the government, he's the president who wants peace, but, he called it, he made a place called the Department of War. There's, Department of Defense gives a lot of comfort to people, not the Department of War.
Right.
And you have, staging military options. And then actually Venezuela, is a dictatorship that oppresses and kills people too. So, but the US is also terrible in government building.
Mm-hmm.
They're all the time, like in Korea and Japan. We're not very good at it. And then he's also going after Colombia. And Colombia is a drug fighting partner. They've been a drug fighting partner for many decades. And Colombia has always been a full participant with U.S. operations on, catching, killing, and destroying drug fields and drug lords. So it's also interesting how Trump is going after him, only because the president there probably shouldn't have. I think it was a bad idea myself, out there joining the young people movement protesting against dictatorships like Trump, because if you know anything about Latin American countries, dictatorships are a thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
And preservation of democracy is very important to people in those countries. And, obviously, he's interested in preserving his own democracy. So, he actually marched in New York during the last UN assembly, and Trump revoked his visa, and a bunch of other people from Colombia, and decided he wants to punish Colombia under the claim that they're a drug lord president, which is fictional. The U.S. government has always been a partner of Colombia. And by the way, your coffee comes from basically two places, Colombia and Brazil.
Right.
Well, those of you who are coffee drinkers, of which I am not one, I'm for some reason not a coffee drinker. You wonder why the prices are going up. Oh, President Trump.
Oh, the prices have skyrocketed. I think it's like $70 a pound now.
Yeah, and it's going to continue to rise. 50% tariff on Brazil. I think it's 25% on Colombia. I'm trying to remember what it is. You're going to see another tariff hike in Colombia. And, and again, you're paying the price literally for these policy decisions because he feels slighted. And God forbid you actually look at the facts of the situation of the relationship. But at the same time, I don't think it was a wise move for a Colombian president to get involved in domestic affairs of the United States.
Anything going on in the district we should talk about, Tackey?
Early voting
Oh,
starts.
for sure. Yes. Yep.
Let's remind folks, your last day to register to vote is this Saturday. You can also early vote at City Hall on Saturday. I'm sure Nikki and the gang is going to come to you to do those PSAs.
Yes.
Mail-in ballots are available. You should have got a mail-in ballot if you did it back in summertime, asking for both the fall and the spring, the two fall ballots, really. I mean, it's November, it's not quite winter. But right. The two ballots, you should have already received your ballot probably 2 weeks ago. Actually, I did order a mail-in ballot as a precaution in case I wasn't around, but I am going to be around election day, so I'll vote in person with my mom. But yeah, those are already available now. And as well as the polling place has been voted on by the council, during the spring. So a big reminder to do that. We have a Democratic City Committee breakfast on Saturday morning at the Sons of Italy at 9:30. My good friend Alicia Garner is receiving the Dennis Ryan Award. Congratulations to Alicia for many years of dedicated service to the Democratic Party, especially at the city level. And the Good Neighbor Award is actually also that day at 5 o'clock at St. Thomas Aquinas Hall in House Neck. So, I'm going to be there as well. It's pretty much the big events that I can think of. Last Saturday, there was like 3 harvest festivals. And
yes.
My cousin was getting married that day. So I was available to go to 3 harvest festivals and No King's Day in Quincy Center. I was at a wedding and a reception and, a whole lot of family coming in. So, so I wasn't available last Saturday. As we get close into next month, we got Veterans Day and you got the Island of Flags ceremony the Sunday before Veterans Day.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Yep. All righty. At the end of the hour here again.
Yeah, 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370. That is the State House phone number, and room 42. We're in the basement of the so-called new section of State House, built in 1899 or 1897, depending which part of the building we want to talk about. But that is called new at the State House. But yeah, room 42. And then we have the state website, malegislature.gov, malegislature.gov. You don't need me to find a bill. You can find it yourself and track it there, because when it's on the website, it's the same time I find out as well. And then you have State Representative Tackey Chan on Facebook, and it's Instagram at Tackey, I think, _Chan. If you know how to use Facebook, you can find me on Instagram. And we are actually weaning off of X because of lack of traffic. It's becoming impractical to maintain X account. Then we have Tackey Chan at OIG, which actually people do use the contact page. Thank you very much. And also other phone numbers and resources that may not require you to contact my office, if you can find the phone numbers for local service there. And of course, me and Joe here every week or 2 weeks, depending on our schedule. And please email Joe at qatv@qatv.org with your questions or desires to see if you like the show or not. But I really do want you guys to send Joe some feedback. And you got a question, Joe will screen them and he'll make a decision of what he wants to surprise me with the next time.
That's right. That's right. These are unscripted, folks. So here's your opportunity. I'd love to hear from you, definitely.
Yeah, 100% unscripted. You never know what's going to happen.
Maybe next week we'll have Halloween costumes on. Who knows?
I've done that since I was a little kid.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tackey.